Welcome back to Track Talk here on Sports Radio 810 WHB and RacinBoys Radio. Don't forget, brought to you by McCarthy Chevrolet. Check them out at kccars.com. Home of the $10,000 price guarantee. Marty Smith, if you need a Chevrolet, you got to go to McCarthy. You know, you can guarantee you're going to get the best price, and if not, they're going to give you $10,000. How about that, bud?
That sounds like a pretty fantastic deal. I'm always open for PSAs. Give them my number.
All right. Hey, Marty, it's good to hear from you. Season's over. Brad Keslowski comes out on top. I picked him to win the championship once we hit the chase. I thought we're going to see a first-time champion. I thought it was going to either be Denny Hamlin. He faded with his problems. Brad Keslowski comes out on top. Mentally strong is what I like to say when I talk about Brad Keselowski. When you talk about Brad Keselowski and people want to know a little bit about him, how do you explain his personality and just a little bit about him?
Unyielding in his quest. There's a lot of deference in NASCAR to champions and people that have done it and certain traditions and certain ways of thinking, and he didn't care about any of that. He was unwavering in his quest to be the greatest that he could be, and I think he has a chip on his shoulder that will be a bit smaller now, but I don't think it will be gone. The way he came into the sport, as you guys know, was very bull in a china shop. He was running over everything. He didn't pay much homage to anybody on the racetrack that most, from a undue respect standpoint.
Yeah. Mark, let me ask you, I want to ask you a little bit about his, connecting to the younger generation and how important that is to our sport right now. And I'm sorry if I cut you off there. But it's important because we're always looking for new people to bring into the sport. We know what the demographic is of the hardcore fans, and we know that it's getting more difficult to bring in the younger fans. How important is it for Brad Keselowski to help us bring in those new young fans?
I think he can help. I think that there's, quite frankly, way too much weight put on that. It does matter. There are people paying attention to NASCAR today that weren't 3 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Because of his attitude and because of his brashness and because of the way he drives. It does. It makes people pay attention, and I think it's great for NASCAR. I think that I think he could be an interesting bridge. I'll say that, because there's a hardcore demo that yearns for the old school attitude that doesn't play nice and that races to win every second. And, he certainly exemplifies that. And then there is the younger generation with Twitter and all of the other variables that engage the younger demo today. So he could be an interesting bridge. There were many parallels to Brad's championship in comparison to Jeff Gordon's first championship in 1995. Young kid, third full-time season kind of thing. And Jeff obviously had a massive impact on the growth of NASCAR. My hope deep in me is that Brad has a huge impact on NASCAR and buoys it in a time when it needs to be buoyed. So I know there was a huge sect that didn't want Jimmie Johnson to win. They're tired of his reign. That's fine. I think Brad will be a great champion because he has such great respect for what it takes to get there. He climbed around underneath the race cars, saw his daddy work himself to the bone trying to race, and it's all he's ever yearned to do. So there is a ton of respect for him from that standpoint, and my gracious, the boy can drive.
Yeah.
And people like how he drives so aggressively. And he's learned to toe the line. He's not running over people anymore. He's racing as hard as you can race cleanly. And that then garners respect from those on the track with him and those in the stands that want to see somebody drive that way.
Marty, what did you feel about the tirade afterwards? I know that we do an Friday afternoon show with one of our local guy is Kevin Kiesman, and we appreciate him having us on every week to talk about NASCAR. But he was pretty
tirade after what? Phoenix?
Yeah, right. And when
I was sitting right there. I saw the whole thing go down.
I'm sure you were. So tell me what your thoughts were as that was taking place, and good or bad, just kind of give us your overall take.
I thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
Here's why. Language notwithstanding, that was everybody's turnoff. He did lose some ears because of the language that he chose. But the passion with which he said the message is what I heard.
Mm-hmm.
He's not wrong.
I agree.
He's not wrong at all. He got crushed by peers after Texas with the way that he raced. And then, coming off of 4 at Phoenix, there's just cars strewn everywhere, and nobody gave anybody any room and all that. That's going to happen. But I appreciated the message that he said. I appreciated the passion with which he said it, and I understand his frustration. I love that I love that he doesn't care what people think about him.
Right.
Everybody in this world is so scared about what people think about him. Brad doesn't care, man. And there's a lot to be said for that. My best friend is that way. Mm-hmm. And he has, my best friend's one of the country singers, and he's beaten, clawed, and scratched his way to the top of that industry because he just doesn't care. And a lot of us are not made that way. I'm not made that way. You guys, I don't know how you're made, but we're in the public eye whether we want to believe it or not.
Right.
And I'm criticized every day. I don't like it a whole lot. Some people don't care. Brad Keslowski is one. It's not posturing. It's the truth.
Right.
Marty Smith is joining us from ESPN. I can't imagine anybody criticizing you, Marty. You're the best out there, and I'm not saying that because you're sitting there.
That's extremely nice of you, but trust me.
He left a big old glob. There was a big old glob of lipstick on your cheek right there.
Right.
Right.
Hey, now, I've just to follow up with Brad Keselowski and his relationship with his father. We've known his father for quite a long time and watched him race in the ARCA ranks and very
I-70 Speedway days.
Right, very interesting guy, Bob Keselowski, and not a lot of people are talking about Ron Keselowski, who is also a big influence on Brad's career. Just talk about that dynamic a little bit, and really, it's the family is what makes Brad who he is and where he came from. Talk about that a little bit.
It's all of that, and it's the upbringing in the industry. Look, Brad has seen the toughest side of NASCAR racing or of stock car racing. He has seen shoestring budget, and I mean pennies, man. He's seen slugging it out all night long underneath the car, trying to make it faster, and he's never lost that, despite the fact that even before he won last weekend, that is innate in him. That's that chip on his shoulder that I'm talking about. That is, thank God Dale Earnhardt Jr. gave me a chance to show what I can be, and thank God Roger Penske gave me a chance on the next level to show what I can be, and I'm not going to forsake that opportunity. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I forget who wrote it, and I wish I knew because I'd like to give them credit, but he told one of my peers a great story. I think it was Jeff Gluck from SB Nation. I'm not sure, but I think it was Jeff. Wrote a cool piece before the championship week about Brad saying the lowest of lows for him was not qualifying for a race at Homestead once. And then you come back full circle, right? And he wins a championship there. And I love that about him, that he takes those nuggets of failure and he turns them into fuel for his soul, for his drive, for his passion, and he learned that by watching his daddy. And because his father had the same passion for racing. And that is the foundation on which this championship is built.
Right.
Were there many, 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 many helpful variables along the way? Of course there were. Everybody has those. Every driver that's ever been successful, every athlete that's ever been successful, actor, politician, you name it, they had somebody that believed in them.
Yeah.
And Brad had those people. But each of those people, too, has to have an innate drive within them to achieve that elite level of success.
Right.
And the reason Brad has that inside of him is because of what he saw his father do.
Well,
and I love that, man. I think that dynamic, that's another one of those things that could be good for the sport, guys, because it is that familial lineage thing that we saw with the Pettys and the Allisons and the Earnhardts.
Mm-hmm.
People like that. People appreciate that. I know I do.
Yeah, me too. Quickly, what would have been better for the season in a whole? Jimmie Johnson to win the championship or Keselowski? Some people think that, the dynasty of Jimmie Johnson, Chad Knaus winning another championship, working their way towards winning 7 championships. Some people would like to see that more like what Tiger Woods did for golf as far as when he was in his prime. What was better, having Brad win or Jimmie?
I asked that very question to anyone that follows me on Twitter. What does this mean?
Right.
The vast majority of them said that it was very refreshing that there's new blood at the top.
I agree.
And some people said it won't move the needle at all. And some people like a dynasty that we've seen with how great the 48 is. Here's my opinion. I think that this scenario was a very good one. I wish that it would have been a 2-point difference going into the last race instead of 20. But I think that the way the race played out was exhilarating for me. You had a moment there when they ran the 2 plumb out of gas and made a terrible mistake, a miscalculation. At that point, Johnson's the race leader and is up by 7 points. So he's made up 27 points in one scenario. Then they have the lug nut situation on the pit stop, gets him deep in the field, and then the car lets go. But they came to play. Like the 48 came to play, the 2 came to play, even though the 2 car wasn't that fast. It just wasn't. But I loved the drama. I thought it was fun to watch. I thought it was really exciting. And I think it's good for NASCAR racing that Brad won.
Yeah. And it's also good
for... I don't know if you guys saw his interview on Sports Center. It's like viral now, but right after the race.
Oh,
it was so raw and so real and in the moment and appreciative, and it was awesome. And that's something that our fans want right now. So I think it's good for the sport, man.
Yeah, we saw that famous interview now that'll be played more times than we can count over the next 2 or 3 weeks until after the banquet. Yeah,
I bet how happy is Miller Lite?
How about Dodge?
That dude had a decanter of beer in his hand.
Right.
And the way he played to the crowd behind him and everything, I thought was pretty engaging. Yeah.
Here on Sports Center. It was awesome.
Hey, Roger Penske, this is huge for NASCAR. I mean, we're talking about somebody that's been involved in NASCAR for as long as he has, not to have won a championship. To watch him celebrate that championship for somebody that's really paid his dues about as much as any owner in NASCAR, not to have won a title, that is huge.
I think as many people were pulling for Penske as they were Keselowski.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
And, there's obviously the reasons you just stated. I mean, he's a foundation. He's a foundation. He's a entity unto himself.
Right.
With all the IndyCar success, all the wins he and Rusty had together.
Icon.
And to have never won one. You're absolutely right. I think a lot of racing purists were cheering for him.
Yeah. No
and
doubt.
for Brad. He actually said this is the ultimate. And for a guy that's won, 15 Indy 500s, 12 championships, is that right? I don't know I think those numbers are right.
I think that's about right, yeah.
On the open wheel side. And, again, one of the most esteemed, highestly regarded, highest regarded people that you're going to find in our industry.
Right.
It was wonderful to see. I enjoyed my conversation. I had a conversation with him right after the fact. We were standing on a stage. It was actually right when Brad was getting hooked up to do that Sports Center interview. I was talking to Mr. And I said, let me ask you a question. I said, what impact did him breaking his leg have on him? Because that was the moment.
Right.
That was the transitionary moment that took him from a pedestrian, middle-of-the-road guy to this indomitable force. Go back and look.
No doubt.
Broke his leg, wins Pocono. I think he then won, 3 of the next 4 races? I don't remember.
Yeah, went on a tear.
Together, and I've had a lot of turkey and vino the last couple of days.
Right.
And but it was this massive transition right there. And I said, what was that the moment? What did that moment do? And he said, I got to be honest with you, I haven't thought that much about it, but you're right. He did become a different driver then. I think he showed himself. I think that was a moment of validation for him in his place in the sport. And I'll tell you why. Because toughness is rewarded here among your peers. And the dude couldn't hardly walk. Everybody's seen the pictures. His leg looked like a sausage.
Right.
And he sucks it up and goes and wins 500 miles at Pocono.
Yeah.
Then comes back and wins. I think if he didn't win the next week, he won a couple weeks later at Bristol. And just a beast. And I think that made him realize, I belong here. And you guys know this. Anybody knows this. When you have that moment of I belong here, all of a sudden the pressure wanes and you have the self-confidence to push it
right
the right way. Instead of running over people, you race hard.
Yep.
And that was that moment for him, I think. And it was a cool moment for me to share that conversation with Mr. Penske, because I just marvel at the guy. I respect that guy so much. And I did the same for Rick Hendrick. They're just great men.
Right.
And they do great things for people. And we don't even need to get into their business acumen, because they forgot more by age 27 than I'll ever know about business. So
no doubt. Well, hey, listen, Marty, we're up against the break here, but I want to ask you quickly. You know, Kirk and I, we have our own little broadcasting company. We broadcast all the Lucas Oil ASCS National Sprint Car races on our website, RacinBoys.com. I noticed that your article about Shane Mealy tragically was injured in a sprint car accident. Talk about this article quickly before we let you go about Shane Mealy.
Yeah, I'll be brief, but I will say this. I am so blessed by him, by his will, by his unwillingness to have a pity party. I've known Shane for a very long time.
Yep.
I knew him when he had a drug problem. I knew him when he got clean. I knew him when he was trying his tail off he got his hands dirty, and he went back to the sprint car ranks, and he put his nose down, and he was doing everything he could, and he was on the brink of coming back in an open-wheel car in the Indy 500 when he got hurt, got paralyzed. And what emerged from that wreckage is a soul that is so rich, and it has just been tremendous for me to be around him. He is hilarious. He has a zest for life right now that is infectious and fills the room. And I know this is self-promoting, so forgive me, but anybody that's listening, it doesn't matter if you're a racing fan. If you like great stories about the human spirit, go to ESPN.com and read this story about this kid. I'll say this. I've been covering racing professionally for 15 years, and I've never had response to a piece like this one.
Wow.
It's the most overwhelming thing I've ever seen. And from inside the racing community and outside, I've had NFL players send me notes, certainly tons of racers, sprint car guys, NASCAR guys, open wheel guys, on and on. And my gracious, what a wonderful soul. And I'm really proud of him. And anybody that knows Shane should be extremely proud of him. He's just a complete beast. And I'm I'm blessed that he's my friend.
You know, when he was over at Braun, I remember standing down in turn 1 at Phoenix, and he went in about 10 car lengths deeper than anybody in qualifying.
He's a beast, man.
It wasn't a good lap, but it was impressive what he did, keeping it off the wall and the way he went about it. And I always tell people, if Shane Mealy would have had his act together at that time, he could be one of the great Cup drivers, young drivers coming up through the ranks, because he had it. Whatever it is,
He sure did.
He had it. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for him. Marty, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and looking forward to talking to you before we get going here in Daytona in just a couple months away, man. Thanks again.
I always appreciate you guys having me. Thanks for listening to my dribble.
Okay.
Have a great holiday season, everybody, and go Hokies today. I hope we beat the Wahoos.
How about
yeah,
that?
there you go.
All right,
All
Marty.
right.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Marty.
much, buddy.